A global empire that had crushed kingdoms from the Danube to the Yellow River was brought to its knees by a forest hidden beneath the water. In the spring of 1288, the Mongol war machine faced a trap so physically exhausting and dependent on split-second timing that a single minute's error would mean the total annihilation of the Vietnamese homeland. How did a battered, outnumbered force lure the world's most feared navy into a shallow river at the exact moment of its supreme vulnerability? The answer lay not in raw firepower, but in the silent, gravitational pull of the moon. This is the story of the Battle of Bach Dang, a tactical masterpiece where a small nation weaponized the very rhythm of the earth to destroy the largest empire the world had ever seen. Across Europe and Asia, the name of the Great Khan inspired absolute terror. Cities that dared to resist were systematically erased from maps, their populations slaughtered to serve as warning signs to any who contemplated defiance. No one had successfully halted their advance on water, as the Mongol navy, built with the captured expertise of Chinese and Korean shipwrights, was a modern marvel of naval engineering. Yet, the leaders of Viet, the medieval kingdom of Vietnam, did not panic. The stakes could not have been higher. Kublai Khan, the ruler of the Mongol Empire and founder of the Yuan dynasty, was deeply humiliated by two previous failed campaigns in Vietnam. To avenge these defeats, he assembled an overwhelming invasion force, a massive combined land and sea armada designed to crush Vietnamese resistance once and for all. As this unstoppable force swept southward, the Vietnamese court faced an existential choice: surrender and be absorbed into the global empire, or fight an enemy that had never accepted defeat. Under the brilliant strategic leadership of Prince Tran Hung Dao, they chose to fight, embarking on a campaign of asymmetric warfare that would culminate in a watery trap at the Bach Dang River. This was not merely a clash of weapons, but a clash of intellects, where the Vietnamese had to turn their entire landscape into a weapon. They understood that to survive, they had to think differently, using the natural features of their land to neutralize the overwhelming numbers and superior cavalry of their invaders. This battle would decide the fate of Southeast Asia. To appreciate the scale of this achievement, we must look at the sheer disparity between the two combatants. The Yuan dynasty possessed resources that were virtually limitless, drawing on the wealth, manpower, and technology of conquered China and Central Asia. Viet, by contrast, was a relatively small agrarian state, its population dwarfed by its northern neighbor. Yet, what the Vietnamese lacked in numbers, they made up for in strategic unity, deep knowledge of their terrain, and a profound sense of national identity. Tran Hung Dao realized that to fight the Mongols on their own terms, in open field battles where their devastating cavalry could maneuver freely, was a recipe for swift defeat. Instead, he sought to draw them into the dense, river-threaded landscapes of the north, where their horses were useless and their massive ships could be turned against them. He began to envision a trap that would rely on the very movement of the tides, a plan so daring that it would require the absolute coordination of the entire society. To understand why the Bach Dang River became the ultimate stage for this confrontation, we must look at the desperate months leading up to the spring of 1288. Kublai Khan's third invasion of Viet, launched in late 1287, was massive, numbering tens of thousands of battle-hardened cavalry, infantry, and a formidable fleet of hundreds of warships. Led by Prince Toghon, the Mongol forces initially swept aside initial defenses, occupying the capital of Thang Long. But the Vietnamese did not stand and fight a conventional war they knew they would lose. They remembered the lessons of the first two invasions in 1258 and 1285, where flexibility and patience had saved them. Once again, they evacuated the capital, leaving behind empty streets, stripped fields, and poisoned wells. This scorched-earth strategy, known historically as Quang Yen, meaning empty countryside and clear fields, turned the Mongol victory into a logistical nightmare. The invaders controlled the capital, but they had no food, no livestock, and no crops to forage. The psychological impact of marching into an empty capital, expecting a grand surrender but finding only silence and starvation, shattered the morale of the invaders. The turning point of the entire campaign occurred far out at sea, near the island of Van Don. A Vietnamese naval force commanded by General Tran Hung Dao intercepted and completely destroyed the massive Mongol supply fleet, led by Zhang Wenhu, which was carrying hundreds of thousands of bushels of grain. Without these vital provisions, Toghon's massive army was stranded in a hostile, stripped landscape with no incoming food supplies. Starvation and tropical diseases began to decimate the Mongol ranks, turning their initial triumph into a slow, agonizing trap. Realizing that staying meant slow death, Toghon made the difficult decision to retreat back to China. He split his forces. He would lead the land army back through the treacherous mountain passes, while the naval fleet, commanded by the arrogant General Omar, would retreat by sea, navigating down the Bach Dang River. This was the exact retreat route Tran Hung Dao had anticipated, and he was already preparing a reception that would echo through history. He knew that the retreating fleet would be desperate, hurried, and highly vulnerable if they could be funneled into a specific bottleneck. The Bach Dang River, with its unique geography and dramatic tidal shifts, was the perfect location to execute a trap that had been successfully utilized centuries earlier by another Vietnamese hero, Quang Yen. In the year 938, Tran Hung Dao studied these historical precedents closely, seeking to adapt an ancient tactic to defeat a far more sophisticated and dangerous opponent. He knew that Omar's pride would be his undoing, and that if he could convince the Mongol general that the Vietnamese were weak and fleeing, he could lure the entire armada into a watery grave. The Bach Dang River was not just any waterway. It was a complex, tidal-dominated river system that emptied into the Gulf of Tonkin. Twice a day, the powerful tides of the Pacific Ocean pushed deep into the river, raising the water level by several meters, before rapidly receding and exposing treacherous mudflats and shallow channels. Tran Hung Dao knew this terrain intimately. He realized that the heavy, deep-drafted Mongol warships would be completely helpless if they were caught in the river during low tide. The plan he devised was simple in concept, but incredibly difficult to execute. It required absolute secrecy, immense physical labor, and flawless timing. First, the Vietnamese mobilized thousands of soldiers and local civilians to cut down massive trees from the nearby forests, selecting heavy, dense hardwoods like ironwood. The logistics of this operation were staggering. Over several weeks, local villagers worked tirelessly alongside soldiers, using heavy axes to fell massive trees. They had to transport these multi-ton logs through dense jungle and muddy swamps to the riverbanks. Each log, some over 6 meters long, was sharpened into deadly, pointed stakes and, in some cases, tipped with heavy iron caps. Under the cover of night, and during low tide, soldiers waded into the freezing mud of the Bach Dang River, driving these massive stakes deep into the riverbed at key choke points, angling them slightly upstream so they would catch the hulls of retreating ships. The stakes were positioned so that when the tide was high, they were completely submerged and invisible to passing ships, but when the tide receded, they would rise like a forest of spears just beneath the surface. The entire trap depended on knowing exactly when the tide would turn on the chosen day. Tran Hung Dao and his commanders meticulously calculated the lunar cycle, waiting for the perfect alignment of the moon and sun that would produce the most dramatic and rapid tidal drop. They had only one chance to lure the entire Mongol fleet into the designated kill zone, and any mistake in the timing of the ambush would allow the Mongol fleet to sail safely over the stakes and escape into the open sea. They studied the local waters, consulted elderly fishermen who knew the river's moods, and created a precise timetable for the operation. Every soldier had to know their exact position, and the decoy forces had to execute their retreat with absolute convincing realism, risking their lives to draw the enemy into the jaws of the trap. The coordination required to plant thousands of stakes in a busy riverway without alerting the enemy's scouts remains one of the greatest feats of military engineering in the ancient world. On the morning of the 9th of April, 1288, a thick fog hung over the Bach Dang River as the formidable Mongol fleet, consisting of hundreds of heavily armed warships, sailed down the river toward the sea. General Omar, confident in his fleet's superior size and firepower, expected a clear path to safety. Suddenly, out of the mist, a small, agile fleet of Vietnamese warships appeared and launched a daring, aggressive attack on the Mongol vanguard. Omar, believing this was a desperate last-stand attempt by an inferior enemy, ordered his entire fleet to engage and pursue the retreating Vietnamese vessels. This was the bait. The Vietnamese decoy ships, intentionally mimicking panic, turned and fled down the river, drawing the massive Mongol armada deeper and deeper into the narrow channel where the stakes lay hidden beneath the high tide. The Mongol sailors rowed hard, their heavy war galleys gaining speed as they chased what they thought was an easy victory. Their commanders eager to salvage some glory from an otherwise disastrous campaign. As the pursuit reached its peak, the lunar tide began to turn, and the water level started to drop with terrifying speed. The air was thick with the smell of sulfur, burning wood, and salt water. Realizing the danger too late, Omar ordered his ships to halt and retreat, but the massive, heavy vessels could not turn quickly in the narrow, crowded river. One by one, the hulls of the Mongol warships crashed down onto the iron-tipped stakes, which pierced through the thick wooden bottoms of the ships, pinning them helplessly in place. The once proud armada was suddenly paralyzed, stranded on a forest of spears. At that exact moment, Tran Hung Dao unleashed his main force. From the dense reeds and forests along both riverbanks, thousands of Vietnamese soldiers launched swift, light boats, swarming the trapped Mongol giants. They rained down fire arrows, launched burning rafts filled with oil into the wooden fleet, and boarded the stranded ships with fierce determination. The river became a roaring inferno of fire, blood, and screaming men. The Mongol soldiers, wearing heavy iron armor designed for land combat, quickly drowned when they fell into the churning water, unable to swim under the weight of their gear. While those on deck found themselves completely helpless with nowhere to run, the sound of splintering wood, the crackle of flames, and the desperate cries of thousands of men echoed across the delta. Vietnamese soldiers, trained in aquatic warfare, moved with incredible agility, boarding the listing Mongol ships and engaging in fierce hand-to-hand combat. The heavy armor and long spears of the Mongol infantry, designed for open plains, were useless in the cramped, burning, and unstable decks of their dying ships. The destruction of the Mongol fleet at Bach Dang was absolute. Of the hundreds of warships that had entered the river that morning, virtually none escaped. Thousands of Mongol soldiers, including elite cavalrymen who had conquered vast empires on land, drowned in the muddy waters or were cut down by Vietnamese archers. General Omar himself was captured alive, along with many of his high-ranking officers. The water of the Bach Dang River was said to have run red with blood, and the wreckage of the burning fleet choked the waterway for miles. The capture of General Omar was a major psychological blow to the Mongol Empire. He was brought before Tran Hung Dao, not as a conquered enemy to be immediately executed, but as a high-value hostage to be used in future negotiations. When news of the naval disaster reached Prince Toghon, who was leading the land retreat through the northern mountains, panic gripped his remaining troops. The retreat turned into a disastrous rout. Local Vietnamese guerrilla forces, intimately familiar with the mountainous terrain, launched relentless ambush attacks on the fleeing, starving land army. Toghon himself had to be smuggled back to China inside a bronze tube to protect him from poison arrows. The third and most ambitious Mongol invasion of Viet had ended in a catastrophic, humiliating defeat. Kublai Khan was so enraged by the loss of his fleet and the failure of his campaign that he banished Toghon to the provinces and began planning a fourth invasion, but the sheer cost of the previous campaigns and his subsequent death prevented the Mongols from ever invading Vietnam again. To prevent further conflict, the Tran dynasty wisely sent a diplomatic mission to China, offering nominal tribute while maintaining their absolute independence. A masterclass in post-war diplomacy that secured peace for centuries. They understood that humoring the ego of the wounded empire was a small price to pay for genuine, lasting sovereignty on their own terms. This pragmatic approach to international relations ensured that while the Mongols saved face, the Vietnamese retained their freedom. It was a visual demonstration of the Vietnamese philosophy of war and peace. Fight with absolute ferocity when survival is at stake, but seek peace and reconciliation the moment the threat is neutralized. By returning captured officers and offering tributary relations, Viet transformed a military triumph into a lasting geopolitical settlement, ensuring that the borders of their kingdom would remain secure from northern aggression for generations to come. The Battle of Bach Dang in 1288 is widely regarded by military historians as one of the greatest tactical masterpieces in human history. It demonstrated how a smaller, technologically disadvantaged force could defeat a global superpower through the brilliant application of asymmetric warfare. Tran Hung Dao did not try to match the Mongols ship for ship or soldier for soldier. Instead, he studied his enemy's weaknesses, mastered the local geography, and weaponized the laws of nature itself. By utilizing the predictable cycle of the tides, he turned the environment into his most powerful ally. This battle redefined the strategic doctrine of Vietnam for generations, establishing a precedent of using mobility, deception, local knowledge, and the active participation of the entire population to resist foreign invasion. It proved that determination, when paired with meticulous planning and scientific observation of the natural world, can overcome even the most overwhelming material superiority. The legacy of Bach Dang is not just about a military victory, it is a testament to the power of strategic patience, showing that sometimes the most effective way to defeat an unstoppable force is to let them rush headlong into a trap of their own making. This concept of using the short to defeat the long, of using flexibility to overcome rigidity, became the cornerstone of Vietnamese military philosophy, echoing through the centuries in their resistance against subsequent foreign powers. Tran Hung Dao's strategic writings, particularly his insistence on winning the hearts of the people to build an unbreakable wall of defense, became the foundational text for subsequent generations of Vietnamese leaders. He famously advised that the key to national survival was not grand fortifications, but rather maintaining deep harmony within the population, ensuring that the gap between the rulers and the ruled remained as small as possible. This philosophy of unity, known as Quan Tu Suk Dan, or sparing the people's strength, became the ultimate defense mechanism of the nation, proving that a unified populace is far more resilient than any fortress. It shifted the focus of military science from mere physical weapons to the psychological and social cohesion of the entire society, a lesson that remains deeply relevant in modern military theory. By examining this battle, historians see a perfect bridge between science and warfare, where the laws of tidal physics were translated directly into tactical dominance on the battlefield. Today, the physical legacy of this legendary battle can still be felt. In the quiet mudflats of Quang Yen, archaeologists have excavated the actual wooden stakes planted by Tran Hung Dao's soldiers over 7 centuries ago, preserved perfectly by the oxygen-free river mud. These dark, ancient timbers stand as silent, powerful witnesses to a moment when history hung in the balance. They serve as a reminder that even the most formidable empires can be defeated when confronted with intelligence, unity, and strategic brilliance. Seeing these physical artifacts bridges the gap between ancient legend and historical reality, proving that the incredible stories of the past are anchored in real, tangible human effort. The preservation of these stakes allows us to appreciate the physical scale of the engineering feat, showing the exact angles at which they were driven and the precise planning required to make the trap work. If you want to explore more incredible stories of strategic genius and historical turning points that shaped our world, make sure to subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell. What do you think was the most critical factor in Tran Hung Dao's victory? Was it the precise timing of the tides, the psychological trap, or the devastating destruction of the Mongol supply fleet earlier in the campaign? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below, and share this video with anyone who loves military history or stories of incredible resilience. By subscribing, you help us bring more of these untold chapters of global history to light, ensuring that the brilliant tactics of leaders like Tran Hung Dao are never forgotten. Thank you for watching, and we will see you in the next episode as we continue to bring the rich, dramatic history of Vietnam to life. Your support allows us to keep digging into the archives, visiting archaeological sites, and sharing the cinematic stories of survival and strategy that define the ancient world. Keep asking questions, keep exploring, and let's continue this historical journey together.